Welcome back to our FPS tutorial in Unity. In this video, we're going to begin the process of creating a heads-up display using the UI system in Unity. So you can see that I have some health bars and such open, and I'm going to use these bars in my project. So these were added to my assets folder. So I'm going to just quickly drag and drop them into my project so that they're there when I need them. And that's in my sprites folder. I'm just going to bring those bars in there. Okay. Now, these come in as textures. We don't really need them as textures. We're going to need them as sprites. So whenever you import in graphics to use, and especially graphics that I want to use for the UI, they need to be sprites. So we can group select all of these and then just change them from default over to sprite for 2D and UI. And if you really want to mess with the pixels per unit, I tend to find that I don't need to, that most of these default settings are fine. So just hit apply and they'll be ready for when we need them. Okay, so we left off with some weapons. And we don't have any crosshair in the center of the screen, so we don't really know what we're aiming at most of the time. So our goal is to start by adding a heads-up display that's going to include a crosshair. And also we'll switch the crosshair based off of which weapon we have equipped. So let's begin by going to Game Object UI Image. And when we do this, this is going to insert in Unity's canvas, as well as an event system. So you can see it inserted canvas, and this is called image. I want to call this capital C crosshair. Now I say capital C and spell out crosshair here because I'm going to search for this by name. I want to say that that's probably one of the more efficient ways to do this because I'm going to instantiate my canvas each level. So whenever I load a new level, I'm going to eventually turn this into a prefab and instantiate this, and I'm going to search for this by name. To facilitate in searching for this by name, let's create a tag for it. So when we click on this, we want to go to Add Tag, and I'm going to add a new tag called UI. So any element I make that's going to be part of my UI is going to have this tag. So we remember have to assign it here. Now it is already on the layer for the UI, but that tends to deal with collisions, clicking, and other things. This tag is for me to find it efficiently. Now when we add this canvas, we don't really see it in the scene view. That it will show up when we're in the game view, and you can even see that this little square that it got added is showing up here. And it actually even shows up if we don't have the player in the world. So we can actually preview our UI before we even hit play. If we hit play, the camera is here and we're trying it finds that crosshair. So let's go through and make this actually set up correctly. So when we first load it in, it does look like it defaults to the center, but it does also change some of the positions. So I want to just kind of go through the process of centering it. So we click on this, I don't even think it's called a gizmo, but this rectangular transform option, and hold down Alt as well as Shift. And then I'm going to single left click on this center, and that's going to center this thing. The rest of these settings are fine. I don't really need to kind of tweak any of this. So with that, we can see that we already have some code that's attempting to find the crosshair and is assigning it some crosshairs, but not exactly how we want it. So that's going to require a quick visit over to our game manager, or actually I believe that is our weapon collector controller. And we can see that we have some of the crosshair code here. when we equip the weapon, we get the sprite and we set the UI crosshair. Now, and you can see that I'm even finding it here. So I eventually want to move the responsibility of this. Well, I guess we could leave it here. So I want to upgrade this a little bit because this, I feel, could be a little bit slower than just grabbing all the items with the tag UI and iterating over them, although I haven't really done a whole lot of tests. So this also prevents future problems arising where if we have a player called Crosshair that doesn't accidentally break our game or something weird. So let's kind of retool this and see how we could do this. So in start, I'm going to say game object array UI underscore elements equals game object dot find game objects plural with tag UI. And that's going to get me an array of all of the things that have this UI tag. Right now it's just Crosshair, but we will eventually add some more. So let's change this so that we're no longer using the find, we're just going to check. So now we're going to loop through. Eventually, we're going to expand on this quite a lot. So we're going to say for each. And it actually did a pretty good job of auto-completing for each game object, UI element, and UI elements. And now we want to create some curly braces. And I'm going to move this if statement into here. I'm going to change this and instead say UI.name equals crosshair. Oops. UI underscore element dot name equals crosshair. And then crosshair will equal UI underscore element get component image. This is, at least as far as I can tell, going to be the more efficient way to do this. We're going to add on to this as we add elements. So the next thing that we want to do is fix the issue of the crosshair being kind of funky. If you notice, so we can save this and we should just verify that this works before making too many drastic changes. And so we can see it works. So what we want to do is make sure that we can control the size of our crosshairs. So that's going to actually require us to expand on the interface for weapons a little bit. So we want to pull up iWeapon and begin to add a bunch here. So isReady is one, and then this is going to be the category for UI things. So we have get crosshair, but I'm going to also want to add public vector3 get crosshair scale, because I want to be able to have a unique scale for each of the different crosshairs. And then let's set up a few things for ammo that we will eventually want. So we're going to need a public string get ammo message. Up here under UI, I want a public method that returns a float, get UI reload, and another one, float get UI energy. And then two final things under ammo. I want a initialize. A lot of things are called initialize. So that's kind of a risky name here. Public void initialize. And public void deinitialize? Uninitialize? I'm not sure what the correct term is here. Judging from the autocomplete, I think it likes that. So those are going to be used basically when the weapon appears to either load it to get the magazine capacity or to refund the ammo back into the pool. And we'll deal with ammo in the next video. Right now we just want to kind of get the UI set up and spawning. While we're tinkering around with things, let's hit save on this and jump over to Game Manager. And under required prefabs, I want to start adding some capacity to spawn this canvas on future maps. So I'm going to add public canvas, lowercase canvas is fine. And this, well, we don't really need a tooltip for it because we know that this is going to be the actual canvas with all of our UI elements. And I'll keep the event system here too, in case we ever make something that's clickable. And then whenever we load a new scene, we want to instantiate canvas. So we will go down here to on scene loaded, and we will say if canvas is not equal to null, then instantiate canvas. And we could instantiate the event system too if we need it, but right now we don't. So what this will do is once we turn all this into a prefab, it will spawn our heads-up display no matter where we're at. So we can save that. And it's a quick change, so that'll be fast for us to spawn our canvas in other places. So now we're going to face some errors in all of the weapons that are inheriting from iWeapon. Because when we added all of these required methods, well, we didn't define them. So our weapons are going to want some code. So I think the easiest thing to do here is just to go to show potential fixes and then implement the interface. And what that's going to do is throw a whole bunch of things down here that just kind of throw some issues. So before we visit Shotgun in Rocket Launcher, let's set up as many of these as we can so that we can copy and paste out of this and make our lives hopefully a little bit easier. So this is, we're going to need to set the crosshair scale. And I want to, so I'm going to scroll up to the top here. And I want to say that belongs right underneath crosshair as a variable called public vector2 crosshair scale equals just the default 1 vector. So it'll start with a scale of 1, which makes sense. So we probably want to put that in all of our other things right now while we're thinking about it. So I'm going to go to the shotgun, go up to the top, right underneath crosshair, put the same thing, launcher, right underneath crosshair, same thing. Just going to take care of that right now so we don't have to worry about that. So if we go back to the blaster, now that we have this scale, we're able to return it. So if we scroll down, get crosshair scale, well, now we can actually return something. And unfortunately, it will want a vector 3. So we're going to return a vector 3 of crosshair scale.x, crosshair scale.y, and 1 for the z. And that's really all we need to do for that. Now, the get UI reloads, we're going to do something with these eventually, but for now, let's just set them to -1. so that they are returning something. When we deal with ammo in a little bit more depth, we will expand upon this, but just right now, -1. Get ammo message. Again, we'll expand upon this in a little bit, but we're just going to return ammo, just so we have text so we can verify that it's working. And right now, initialize and uninitialize can be blank. And we'll explore the rest of these methods in the next video, but at least we have them so that things will compile. And we can work on actually getting the UI working first. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to copy all of these. So I'm going to copy the, starting from crosshair scale all the way down to uninitialize. Right-click, copy. And I'm going to jump over to the bottom of each of these other ones and put these new sections of code here. We will revisit each weapon later, but right now this is putting it there so that the requirements for the abstract class for the interface are fulfilled, and we have stuff that we can at least get the UI working with. Okay, so we should be free of crashes. Now would be a good time to just verify that. So we're back, no crashes, nothing's changed, but we did make some important changes to our infrastructure. So what we want to do now is actually set the scale of our weapons on our weapon prefabs, that new variable called crosshair scale, and then actually implement that. So all of that's going to be found under the FPS weapons, and then the weapons, and then these are the prefabs for these. So you can see here that the crosshair scale starts as 1 and 1. So that's fine for this one at least. For the shotgun, 1 and 1 was way too big, so I'm going to try 0.15 for both. For the launcher, I'm going to try 0.25. Oops. All right, so we've got that, and right now it's not going to do anything. We need to then actually add the code in so that we can do that. So I'm going to switch back to Visual Studio real quick, and we need to update the weapon controller to apply this new scale. So we have our crosshair getting set to this native size, and that's not going to help us. We also want to rescale it. So we are going to want to call kind of a chunky line here, I think. UI underscore crosshair dot rect transform dot local scale equals current weapon dot get components iWeapon dot get crosshair scale. Like I said, it was kind of a long, chunky line. Also, let's make it so that we can turn off the UI, the crosshair initially. So we'll just say crosshair enabled equals true. We might want to include this line. So I'm going to actually just grab all of these lines, all 3 of these. And inside of the equip weapon, I've also got this code here that does essentially the same thing. So I want to paste that here. And actually, because equip weapon gets called first, we can probably take this enabled call out of the late updates, because we don't need to re-enable it every frame. We only need to enable it when we switch to it. So let's give that a test, and let's see if our weapons, and we can actually turn off this crosshair if we find this to be, distracting or anything. So I can just take this and check that. Alternatively, I could also scale it down, so it's like super tiny. Or I could just disable it. And then when we actually hit play, it will re-enable my crosshairs. So now you can have different types of crosshairs that allow you to kind of measure different things. Next up is we're going to want to try to get this to persist, and we're going to also need to add a bunch of things. But when we go to our new level, there's one more thing that I want to do with our weapons. Notice I have the shotgun equipped right now. When I go into here, well, one, I don't have a UI anymore, and I just have my blaster. Well, it switched what was equipped. It always goes back to the default of the blaster. So let's kind of take a look at fixing that. So that's going to be a Visual Studio fix. And what that basically is our current weapon is being stored inside of Weapon Controller, when it makes more sense that this would be something that we would need to remember in between levels. So let's actually create another game state variable here called public int current weapon, and I'm going to set that to 1 and hit save. And over in Weapon Controller, I'm going to delete this current weapon index. And I'm going to just go to wherever there's errors and just update it to that new game manager variable. So the command to equip a weapon will now be game manager dot instance, which gets all of my data repository dot current weapon. So this is now the variable for what my current weapon is. So down here, I can swap this out, swap this out, swap this out, swap that out. So basically just copy and paste it 6 times there, but then the error goes away. And that's what I wanted. So now you can test this and you'll be able to see that it's going to remember that in between level transitions. So our crosshair works pretty good, and overall I'm actually really happy with that. What I want to do next is start rigging up the rest of our UI elements so that we can implement ammo. And that's going to be a big task and will be primarily focused in the next video. My main goal here is to get our UI loading in between levels. So inside of Canvas, the next things that we want, I want an ammo count, so that whenever I have the shotgun equipped or a weapon that has finite ammo, that I can see a text readout of how much ammo that is. So we're going to want to add a game object. It's a UI element, and it is a text mesh pro. The old text actually is a little bit deprecated, and it's found under legacy text. So if you have an attachment to the old style of text, you can do that. But most things now have moved on to Text Mesh Pro. So when you do that, you might get this thing that says imports TMP essentials. We will need to do that. And so that just behind the scenes, and it pops open Visual Studio, of course. Behind the scenes, it's importing some stuff. Now, do we need this? Probably not. We can always pop this open later if we need the extras. So I'm not going to import that. Save me a little bit of space in my project. Okay. Now you can see that this created this thing that says new text just kind of slapped in the middle of the screen. So I want to make the text appear in the bottom right over here. So we're going to click on the transform gizmo, making sure that I have the text selected. And I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift and then click on this bottom right alignment, and you can see that it places it down here. I might bump the X in by -30, and then increase the width to 400. Now, this seems a little bit weird, and that's just because it's left justified right now. I want to switch the justification to right justified so that the text aligns to the right. You can play with it to make it more fancy if you wanted to. So, other things that I want to do, I do need to tag it. I need to make it tagged as UI. I want to rename it to maybe something like ammo count. Just remember what you named it because we're going to have to search for it by name later. And then I'm going to put some text here that says ammo. And just something simple here about how much ammo I have. All right. So that's good. We'll change the color when we're changing weapons so that each ammo could have a separate color. So that would be neat. Other things that we need is we're going to want to do a health bar. So I'm going to have canvas selected, go to game object, UI, image, and this is going to be the back of the health bar. So I'm going to say health bar back. And again, I need to tag this as UI. Let's create the front of the health bar too real quick before we start assigning things. So with health bar back selected, I'm going to then insert another UI image. And this is going to be called health bar front. And it didn't make it as a child, that's fine. I can just drag and drop it so that it's targeting this, and you can see that it childs it to there. So the health bar, let's load the graphic and then start centering it. So the graphic that I want is inside of my sprites that I imported and then bars. And I want the one that says GUI HP frame. I don't think I need the 2x scale. I think I'm fine with the smaller one. And so when I have bar back selected, I'm just going to drag and drop this into source image, and it will allow me to because it is a sprite. If this isn't working for you, then remember to check to make sure that this is set to a sprite. So make sure that this says sprite over here. So I'm going to drag and drop it. And you can't see it because this other one is in front of it. And we're going to eventually need to fix these sizes. But in this other one, I'm going to take GUI HP bar and plop it there. Now, they aren't really the size I want. So I'm just going to click on Set Native Size for both of these. And that kind of gets it a little bit better. Now, I want the health bar in the bottom left. So I'm going to click on the alignment gizmo, hold down Shift and Alt, and click down there. I'm going to bump it up maybe 10 pixels from the X. I don't think these are pixels, but I'm going to pretend they're pixels. And 10 pixels from the Y. And notice how both bars, because front is a child of back, it's going to follow it around. But I do want to change its alignment, and I do want to change a few properties of this front bar. Because right now it's placing itself in the center of this hit point bar. And that's not really kind of what I want. I want to place it justified on the left, because that makes it a little bit easier for me to pick a position here. I think it is, maybe 24, maybe 28. 28 looks correct. So it's 28 pixels, I guess those are pixels, 28 pixels in from the side. That looks like that's lined up. Now, I also want to switch this from image type simple to filled, because this is going, and then from filled also of horizontal fill, because this is what's going to let me kind of slide it in as like a health bar. This is going to be the slider that I'm going to interact with through code to cause my health bar to change and to lower. Now, if you really wanted to get into tinting it, it's not super useful that it's green right now, and you might want to consider instead using the white one. Now the problem is, well, I guess it fit the size fine. And then you can tint this whatever color you want. So if you need the health bar to change colors based on what you need, you might want to switch it to the white one. And then you can also play around with, like, you could really get the same color if you spend enough time figuring it out. So like you can't really tell the difference that this is just the white health bar tinted this shade of green. So if you wanted to like tint it red when you're low health, this might be the solution that you might want to use. Okay, that is good. Let's create a reload bar. So again, I'm creating all these bars to facilitate the programming part that we're going to do next. So the reload bar, I don't have reload animations for our weapons. So we're just going to use a bar to represent the reloading that's going to take place. So we're going to go back to Canvas. Now the other way that we can insert stuff is if we right click it, go to UI, image, and then we can go through and call this reload bar back. We're going to create another image called reload bar front, and we're going to do the same exact thing that we did for the health bar. So I parented this to the back, and then I'm fine with leaving this centered because I want to put this kind of up on the screen, like above a little bit. So I'm going to use the unlabeled bar, which is right here. It's just called GUI bar frame. And then I'm going to use, I could just use the white bar and just tint it to whatever color I want. Now, if I hit set native size, these do end up becoming a little too big that I don't want my reload bar that big. So I'm just going to actually do the math on dividing this by 4 for the width. So this will be 104. And so I'm going to divide the height by 2. And this is going to be 114. And I'm going to tint this yellow. Or, you know, tint it whatever color you think a reload bar should be. And I'm going to move the bar back up 80 pixels so it would appear here on the screen. So the idea is that it appears above your crosshair to indicate when we are reloading. And then the back, we want to switch it from simple to filled. We don't want radial because that'll look really silly. We want a horizontal fill so that it will start empty and it will fill on up. And there's one more that I want to create. And I want to create a ammo indicator that is instead of text. I just want to do a bar just so we can. So we could just duplicate this existing reload bar and then just rename it. I'm going to call this ammo bar back and then ammo bar front. And I'm going to change the tint to be blue. Why not? Maybe, I don't know. Blue seems fine. And I'm going to drag, well, I'm not going to drag. I'm going to tell this to center down here on the ammo instead. It's going to overlap, and that's okay, because we are going to change this. Oh, when we're on this edge of the screen, it's -X to bring it in. And maybe I want this ammo indicator to be slightly bigger, so I'm going to double the size. And we can even adjust this slider so we can see it. So it's okay that it's overlapping because these aren't going to all be visible at the same time, but I just want them visible right now so that we can verify that we have all this put together. So let's just go through the process of making sure all these are tagged as UI. Which I think I neglected to do this entire time. So they're all tagged as UI. And so we're pretty good to go at this point. If we hit play, we should see all of these bars are appearing on the screen, and this is where they'll appear when they're going to pop up when we're actually scripting them to do our thing. So this is where we want them. So, adjust as needed. And now we're going to fix the issue of no UI. So when we leave the scene, our UI does not follow us. At least our weapon was remembered. All right, so this is actually pretty straightforward, and we already kind of set up the infrastructure to do this. So under prefabs, I'm going to create a new folder for UI. It's going to be a UI prefab. And I'm going to take the canvas, which is currently untagged. I probably should tag that as UI. That seems like something that could be useful down the road. And I'm going to drag and drop it into the UI folder. And I'm going to take the event system and drag and drop it down there too. Now that these are prefabs, we can then link them in our game manager, because our game manager we added those slots for a canvas and an event system. So we can put our canvas here, and we can put our event system here. Now we don't need extra copies. This will actually spawn 2 of them. Not that we'll notice, but we have 2 UIs here, which would be a disaster. We can delete them out of our scene. So select them in your scene, push delete. Now, if you wanted to edit them, you probably will want to bring it back in, because it's a little bit of a pain to try to edit it from here. So if I did want to edit my canvas, I would bring it back in, make my changes. So, maybe make the ammo count a bigger font size. And then I could hit apply all on the parent part here, and then that will update the prefab. So that's how we'll be able to change it in the future, is we just drag it back in, make our changes, and then go to the parent part, and then underneath overrides, tell it to apply all, or if we don't like the changes, to revert all, or just simply delete it if we didn't like the changes. And so now when we hit play, there's our UI. And now when we go to the next level, our UI is going to follow us there too. And so now we're ready to start putting ammo into our game, because we're able to actually see, we get some visual feedback on reloading and ammo. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting about building a UI system for our game. And in the next video, it might take us 2 videos depending on how long it gets. We're going to implement ammo and reloading, and then that will wrap up chapter 2. Then we'll begin chapter 3, where we start putting enemies and animations for those enemies into our game. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.